She saw him across the grand ballroom and her hands went cold. Marcus Trent, her ex-husband, the man who'd called her pathetic when she was accepted to the Strasbourg Institute. He smirked at her simple black dress, dismissing her with a glance. She was working the gala, authenticating pieces for the very collectors he tried to impress. Too perfect. He nudged his new wife, whispering something that made them both laugh. Then he started walking toward her, that predatory smile she remembered too well. But he made one fatal mistake. He didn't notice the man watching from the shadowed alcove, the reclusive tech billionaire who'd funded the entire exhibition, and who was about to introduce Thea in a way that would shatter Marcus's entire world. The Metropolitan Arts Center smelled like money and desperation. Thea Kellen stood beside a 17th-century Caravaggio, her laminated authentication badge hidden beneath her shawl. The piece had taken her 4 months to verify: pigment analysis, infrared imaging, provenance documentation stretching back to a Tuscan monastery. Tonight, it would sell for 8 figures. She'd get her standard consultant fee. Marcus would be in the room, pretending he understood the difference between chiaroscuro and sfumato. Have you ever had to face someone who destroyed your confidence in a room full of people judging you? That was Thea's reality. 3 years ago, Marcus sat across from her in their marriage counselor's office and said, "Your little art hobby isn't a career. Magnolia understands what it takes to support someone building an empire." Magnolia. 23 years old, trust fund pedigree, and currently hanging on Marcus's arm in a dress that cost more than Thea's rent. The divorce had been surgical. His legal team painted Thea as financially incompetent, ignoring that she'd supported them both while Marcus got his MBA. She walked away with her books, her equipment, and a settlement that was an insult. But she'd rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, every authentication job, every consulting contract, every sleepless night bent over a spectrometer. This exhibition was supposed to be her triumph until she saw the guest list. "You're shaking," whispered Freya, her colleague and only friend at the event. Freya handed her champagne. "He doesn't own this space, you earned your place here." "He's on the Arts Center board," Thea said, watching Marcus work the room. "He donated enough to get his name on a wing he's never visited." "Well, the mystery donor funded the actual exhibition." Freya nodded toward the shadowed second-floor balcony. "Supposedly he's here tonight, first public appearance in 2 years." Thea had communicated with the donor's office for months, terse, precise emails about provenance standards and insurance values. She'd assumed it was a corporation, a shell entity, not a person who might actually attend. Thea breathed. "You authenticated 6 pieces in this collection. That Caravaggio, 3 auction houses called it a copy. You proved it was real. You saved the center from a $50 million mistake." That's when Marcus spotted her. His expression shifted: surprise, then calculation, then contempt. He leaned down to whisper something in Magnolia's ear. She looked over, her face a mask of practiced sympathy, the kind rich people wear when seeing someone less fortunate. They both turned away, dismissing her existence. It was a message: "You're beneath our notice." But then Marcus glanced back. His eyes narrowed. He was planning something. Subscribe before this goes somewhere you won't expect. Most people miss the warning signs until it's too late. Thea needed air. She slipped through a service corridor into the Renaissance wing, empty, quiet, lights dimmed to preserve the delicate paintings. She stopped before a Bellini Madonna, finding brief peace in the sorrowful eyes. The Virgin's face held a resigned understanding of coming pain. Thea understood that look. "The gold leaf is wrong." She spun around. A man stood 3 paintings away, hands in his pockets, studying a triptych attributed to Duccio. He was tall, maybe late 40s, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit with no flashy accessories. Dark hair touched with silver. Sharp features that suggested Central European ancestry. He didn't look at her, his focus was entirely on the painting. "Excuse me," Thea said, "the gilding technique." He moved closer to the triptych. "It's shell gold, not leaf." 14th century Sienese workshops used powdered gold mixed with gum arabic. This was applied with a brush, not hammered onto bowl. Most people miss it. Thea stepped beside him, peering at the surface. He was right. Under the gallery lights, you could see the faint brush marks in the gold background. "You have a good eye. I had a good teacher." He finally looked at her and Thea felt something shift. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and they held hers with uncomfortable intensity. "You're Dr. Kellen?" Yes, I'm with the authentication team. I know, your report on the Caravaggio was exceptional. The infrared analysis of the underpainting showed he'd changed the composition twice. You documented his creative process. That's not just authentication, that's scholarship." Heat rose to her cheeks. "When was the last time someone had actually read her work?" "Thank you, that means I'm sorry. Have we met?" "Nathaniel," he said, extending his hand. His grip was warm and firm. "Just a guest. Are you enjoying the gala?" "I hate galas," she admitted, surprising herself with honesty. "Everyone looks at the price tags, not the paintings." His mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. "Most people here couldn't tell a Caravaggio from a Carracci. But you can. I had time to learn and excellent tutors." He turned back to the Duccio. "This piece has an interesting history. It was looted from Siena during the Napoleonic Wars, surfaced in a private collection in Geneva in 1847, then disappeared until 1983. The provenance gaps make it legally complicated." "You know about the Geneva collection?" Thea's pulse quickened. 6 months ago, she'd been hired anonymously to assess a painting from a Geneva vault, a supposed Vermeer that turned out to be a very skilled 19th century forgery. The owner never revealed themselves. The fee had been extraordinary. That job had kept her solvent through winter. "I know about many things, Dr. Kellen." His tone was mild, but something in his eyes suggested layers she couldn't read. "Tell me, why do you do this work? The authentication, the provenance research. It's meticulous, often tedious, and I imagine the pay is inconsistent. What would you say to someone who asked why you do what you love, even when it's nearly destroyed you?" Comment below. "Because these paintings are messages," Thea said, looking at the Bellini Madonna. "Artists from 500 years ago trying to tell us something true about being human. My job is to make sure we're listening to the real voice, not a copy or a forgery. That matters." Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. "That's the best answer I've ever heard." Before she could respond, a thin man in a headset appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Laurent, they're ready to begin. The director is waiting." Laurent, the name detonated in Thea's mind. Nathaniel Laurent, not just any billionaire, the billionaire. The man who'd made a fortune in encrypted communications, then vanished from public life 5 years ago. The man whose foundation funded museums, libraries, research institutes. The man whose office she'd been emailing for 6 months. The donor. She started. "Late," Nathaniel said, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Kellen, this conversation was the most genuine I've had in months. Perhaps we can continue it after the speeches." He walked away, his stride confident and unhurried, leaving Thea standing alone in the empty gallery with her heart hammering. She just casually discussed art history with one of the most powerful men in the world, and he'd read her work. Actually read it, get back to the main hall. Now, the thought broke through her shock. The speeches were starting, and Marcus would be positioning himself for an introduction to Nathaniel Laurent. That's what tonight was really about for him, not art, access. The grand ballroom had transformed into a theater of anticipation. The crowd pressed toward the small stage where the Art Center director, Dr. Whitmore, was sweating through his introduction. Thea stayed at the back, half hidden behind a marble column. She watched Nathaniel Laurent mount the stage with no fanfare, no wave, just a calm presence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathaniel said, his voice carrying effortlessly without the microphone. "I'll be brief. I funded this exhibition because I believe our responsibility as stewards of wealth is to preserve what actually matters, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after. Art is memory made visible. Tonight, you're looking at 5 centuries of human genius. That's worth protecting." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. For one heart-stopping second, Thea was certain he was looking directly at her. "But preservation requires expertise," Nathaniel continued. The authentication process for this collection was led by Dr. Thea Kellen, whose scholarship quite literally saved this institution from a catastrophic acquisition error. "Her work is why you can trust what you see tonight." The crowd applauded politely. Thea's breath stopped. He'd named her, publicly, in front of Marcus, in front of everyone. She saw Marcus's reaction from across the room, his jaw tightening, his eyes narrowing as he located her in the crowd. He looked at Nathaniel Laurent, then back at Thea. His expression was pure calculation. He was connecting dots, making assumptions, arriving at all the wrong conclusions. The speech ended. The crowd surged forward to meet Nathaniel Laurent, but he'd already disappeared through a side exit with security. Thea tried to slip away toward the service corridor. A hand clamped onto her arm. Hard. Well, Thea. Marcus's smile was a predator's grin. Magnolia stood beside him, bored, scrolling her phone. Thea tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, fingers digging into her bare skin. "That's quite a performance," Marcus said, his voice low but carrying. "I had no idea you'd gotten so ambitious. Let go of me." "Oh, come on. Don't be cold." He was enjoying this, she realized, enjoying her discomfort. "I saw you disappear with Laurent earlier, private conversation in the gallery, very convenient. I always knew you had potential, Thea. I just didn't realize you'd use it like this." The implication was vile. "I was working, that's what I do here, I work." "Right, working." Marcus raised his voice, drawing attention. A circle of guests slowed, pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. "Is that what you call sleeping with donors now? I have to hand it to you, that's a creative pivot from your little authentication hobby. Some people deserve what's coming to them." This was one of those moments. "Stay with me." Blood drained from Thea's face. She wrenched her arm free, red marks blooming where his fingers had been. "You're drunk, you're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" Marcus laughed loud, ugly, performative. "Thea, sweetheart, you're the scene, look at you. Borrowed dress, staff badge you're trying to hide, playing pretend at a party you could never afford to attend as a guest. I gave you everything, I gave you a life, and you threw it away to play with dusty paintings for pennies." "You didn't give me anything," Thea said, her voice shaking but clear. "I earned everything I have. You took everything I built and called it yours." "Earned?" Marcus gestured dramatically to their growing audience. "You want to know what she earned? Alimony she didn't deserve from a marriage she quit. She walked away from comfort, from security, to prove some idiotic point about independence. And where did it get you, Thea? Here, serving champagne to people who actually matter." Magnolia finally looked up from her phone. "Marcus, people are staring. Let them stare." He was fully performing now, feeding off the attention. "I want everyone here to understand what kind of person Thea Kellen really is. She's a liar, a manipulator. She married me for my future, and when I succeeded without her, she rewrote history to make herself the victim. And now," he jabbed a finger toward where Nathaniel had exited, "now she's trying the same game with Laurent. Except this time she's batting way out of her league." The crowd had grown. Thea saw Dr. Whitmore watching with horror. She saw Freya pushing through to reach her. She saw donors and board members and critics all witnessing her humiliation. This was the nightmare she'd feared. The moment Marcus would finally destroy what little professional reputation she'd rebuilt. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows," Marcus continued, his voice ringing through the ballroom. "Thea Kellen is not an art expert, she's not a scholar, she's a desperate social climbing opportunist who, a cold voice cut through the ballroom, "is where you are catastrophically mistaken." The temperature dropped. The crowd's murmur died instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. Nathaniel Laurent moved through the parting guests like a scalpel through flesh, precise, unhurried, devastating. He'd removed his suit jacket. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. He looked like a man preparing for violence, but his face was perfectly calm. He stopped directly in front of Marcus, so close that Marcus, taller and broader, actually stepped back. Nathaniel didn't acknowledge Thea, he simply stood beside her, a wall of quiet, absolute authority. "Mr. Trent," Nathaniel said, his voice was conversational, almost gentle. That made it more terrifying. "I heard your assessment of Dr. Kellen's character. Liar, manipulator, social climber, those are serious accusations, let's examine them." Marcus's face cycled through emotions, shock, confusion, then forced bravado. "Mr. Laurent, I'm Marcus Trent, Trent Capital, it's an honor, this is a personal matter with my ex-wife. I didn't mean to." "You called her a social climber," Nathaniel interrupted. "Interesting, Dr. Kellen has 3 graduate degrees, 2 peer-reviewed publications in the Journal of Art Historical Research, and has consulted for 11 major museums in 4 countries. What are your credentials in Renaissance art history, Mr. Trent, Marcus's mouth opened, closed. I'm a board member here. You purchased board membership, Nathaniel corrected. Dr. Kellen earned her position through expertise. Let's continue. You claim she's trying to manipulate me for financial gain. Is this the kind of takedown you'd want to see in real life? Comment yes or no. That's not I just meant. Marcus's composure was cracking. 6 months ago, Nathaniel said, his voice cutting, my foundation was considering acquiring a painting certified by 2 auction houses as a period-correct Dutch work. The seller claimed 17th century provenance. The estimated value was 80 million euros. Dr. Kellen, hired anonymously as an independent consultant, analyzed it for 3 weeks. She identified it as a 19th century forgery, brilliant work but modern materials in the ground layer. She saved my foundation from an 8-figure mistake. In return, I paid her consultation fee and began following her career. That was the extent of our professional relationship until 2 hours ago, when I met her in front of a Billionaire, and she gave me the most honest conversation I've had in years. The crowd was silent, phones were out recording, this would be on social media within minutes. Thea's mind was white noise, he'd been the Geneva client, he'd been following her career, this was real. Nathaniel turned to Thea for the first time. His expression softened infinitesimally. Dr. Kellen, I apologize, I'd planned a more romantic setting for this, but your ex-husband has forced my hand. He reached into his pocket and produced a small black velvet box. The crowd gasped, a collective, audible inhalation. Thea, Nathaniel said, and his voice lost its cold edge, becoming something raw. 3 months ago, my office hired you as a consultant. You had no idea who was actually reading your reports. I did. Every word. Your integrity, your precision, your refusal to compromise on truth even when it cost you money, that told me who you are. Then I met you tonight and you were exactly the person I'd hoped you'd be. I've been carrying this ring for a week, waiting for courage and the right moment. This isn't the right moment. But it's honest, and you value honesty above everything else. He opened the box. Inside was a ring that made Magnolia's emeralds look like costume jewelry, a flawless oval-cut diamond, colorless and clear, set in platinum with 2 smaller stones flanking it. It was timeless, it was devastating. Marry me, Nathaniel said, not as a donor, not as Nathaniel Laurent, as the man who got lost in that gallery talking to you about shell gold and underpainting. Marry me because you see me and I see you, and that terrifies and thrills me in equal measure. Thea's hands were shaking. The entire room was holding its breath. Marcus looked like he'd been struck by lightning, face white, eyes bulging, mouth working soundlessly. Have you ever watched someone's entire worldview shatter in real time? This was it. Yes, Thea whispered, then, stronger, yes. Nathaniel took the ring from the box and slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it fit perfectly. He'd probably had her ring size obtained through some discreet method she'd never know about. The diamond caught the gallery lights and threw rainbow fractals across the marble floor. Then he kissed her. Not chastely, not for show. He kissed her like they were alone, like the room of 200 people didn't exist, and Thea kissed him back because this was insane and perfect and real. When they broke apart, Nathaniel kept his arm around her waist and turned back to Marcus. You stated, Nathaniel said, his voice returning to ice, that Dr. Kellen, my fiancée, couldn't afford to attend this party as a guest. You're correct, she was invited as the lead consultant whose expertise made this exhibition possible, but let me clarify her new status. He looked past Marcus to Dr. Whitmore. Director, my foundation will be restructuring its endowment to the Arts Center. Effective immediately, we're establishing the Laurent Chair in Art Authentication, a fully funded position with a $2 million annual operating budget. Dr. Kellen will hold that chair. She'll report directly to the board with full autonomy over acquisitions and provenance research. Dr. Whitmore looked ready to faint. Mr. Laurent, that's yes, of course, absolutely. Additionally, Nathaniel continued, never breaking eye contact with Marcus, the Laurent Foundation will be reviewing all current board appointments. Mr. Trent, I believe your term comes up for renewal next month. Marcus found his voice. You can't, I donated millions. Your donation is appreciated, Nathaniel said. Your presence is not. The board will be informed that continued association with you represents a reputational liability to the Foundation's partnership. They'll make the appropriate choice. Thea watched Marcus's face transform, shock to rage to dawning horror. He was being erased from the social sphere he'd bought his way into. Every door Nathaniel Laurent closed was a door no amount of money could reopen. "This is insane," Marcus choked out. "You're destroying my reputation over what? A woman you barely know? This is a joke." "Thea, tell him this is you're making a mistake." "The only mistake," Thea said, surprised by the steadiness of her voice, "was believing for even 1 second that you had the power to make me feel small." "I'm not small, Marcus. I never was. You just needed me to believe I was so you could feel bigger." She took Nathaniel's hand, the hand with the ring that felt both surreal and exactly right, and turned away from Marcus Trent for the last time. Subscribe now if you want to see more endings like this, because most people never get to witness real justice. The walk to the exit took forever and no time at all. The crowd parted like water. Some faces showed awe. Others showed calculation. Who was this woman who'd won Nathaniel Laurent? Thea saw Freya, tears streaming down her face, giving her a fierce thumbs up. At the grand entrance, Thea couldn't help it. She glanced back one final time. Marcus stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by guests who were now very deliberately not looking at him. Magnolia was already walking away, phone to her ear, probably calling her father's lawyers. Marcus's carefully constructed world of power and performance was collapsing in real time, and everyone could see it happening. Thea felt nothing, not triumph, not pity, just a clean, empty space where he used to live in her head. "Are you all right?" Nathaniel asked quietly as they stepped into the cool night air. "I don't know," Thea admitted. "This is what just happened in there. I proposed, you said yes, and I removed a threat to your well-being." He studied her face. "Are you having regrets about saying yes?" Thea looked down at the ring, then up at him. "Nathaniel, we've had one conversation, one real conversation." "We've had dozens," he corrected. "Every email about the Caravaggio, every technical question about pigment analysis, every debate about attribution standards, those were conversations. I just didn't tell you who I was. And yes, that was calculated and perhaps unfair. But I wanted to know you, the real you, not Dr. Kellen trying to impress a donor, but the scholar who gets angry about forged provenance and excited about underdrawings. That's incredibly manipulative. Yes, and probably a massive red flag, almost certainly, and you just proposed to me in front of my ex-husband primarily to destroy him." Nathaniel's expression flickered, something that might have been guilt. "Primarily to protect you, destroying him was a beneficial side effect, though I'll admit the timing was strategic. What would you do if someone did this for you? Romantic or toxic? Tell me in the comments." Thea should have been angry, should have felt used. Instead, she started laughing, a real, bubbling laugh that made her double over. "This is insane. This is the most insane night of my entire life." "I can drive you home," Nathaniel offered. "Give you time to think. Keep the ring or return it, your choice. I meant what I said in there, but I also understand if the execution was too much." "Too much?" Thea wiped her eyes. "Nathaniel, you just publicly proposed to me to defend my honor like we're in a Regency novel. You demolished my ex-husband's social standing in under 5 minutes. You created an endowed chair position that will change my entire career. And you're giving me an out? I'm giving you autonomy," he said quietly. "The one thing your ex-husband never did." That's what cut through the absurdity and reached something real. Thea looked at this strange, brilliant, terrifying man who just turned her world upside down, and who was now offering to walk away if she asked. "I'm not giving the ring back," she said, his expression transformed, not quite a smile but close. No, but I have conditions. First we date, actually date. Not emails, not consultations, real dates where we learn if we actually like each other. Second, the endowed chair stands whether or not we work out because I earned that based on my work, not this." She held up the ring. "Third, you tell me everything. Who you really are, why you've been hiding, why you decided that tonight was worth coming out of whatever billionaire cave you've been living in. Those are reasonable terms. And fourth," Thea stepped closer, "you explained to me how you had my ring size. Your university alumni directory had a photo from a gallery opening 2 years ago. Your right hand was visible." I estimated based on the proportions and had the jeweler create a sizing set. The one you're wearing is the middle option. There are 2 others in the car if it doesn't fit properly. Thea blinked. That's incredibly thorough and slightly concerning. I'm aware I'm working on the balance between prepared and obsessive. She laughed despite herself. And 5th, you kiss me again, but this time not in front of 200 people with cameras, just us. Nathaniel pulled her close, and this kiss was different, slower, deeper, with no performance and no audience. It tasted like possibility and risk and the strange, terrifying freedom of not knowing what came next. When they broke apart, a sleek black car had materialized at the curb. The driver stood by the open door, professionally invisible. I have a plane waiting at Teterboro, Nathaniel said. We could be in Paris by morning. Or I can take you home to your apartment, and we can have our first official date tomorrow at a completely normal restaurant where no one proposes to anyone. Thea thought about her tiny rent-controlled apartment with its piles of research papers and second-hand furniture. Thought about Marcus back in that ballroom watching his world burn. Thought about the woman she'd been 3 hours ago, afraid, small, trying to make herself invisible. That woman was gone. Paris, Thea decided. But we're stopping for burgers first. I'm starving and airplane food is terrible no matter how expensive the plane is. Nathaniel laughed, a real laugh that softened the sharp angles of his face. As you wish, Dr. Kellen. Still not subscribed? Comment below what's holding you back. I'm genuinely curious. The car pulled away from the arts center, leaving behind the party and the drama and Marcus Trent's spectacular implosion. Through the back window, Thea watched the building shrink into the distance. Inside, her Caravaggio hung in perfect light, authenticated and real, waiting for people who would actually see it. 3 years ago, Marcus had told her she was nothing. Tonight, she'd learned she was engaged to one of the world's most powerful men, and more importantly, she'd learned she didn't need that validation. She'd already been extraordinary. Someone had just finally noticed. The car stopped at a 24-hour diner in Queens. Nathaniel Laurent, billionaire recluse, sat in a cracked vinyl booth and ordered a cheeseburger with extra pickles. Thea ordered fries and a chocolate shake, and they talked about shell gold and underpainting and the ethics of restoration versus preservation. It was, Thea thought, the best first date she'd ever had, even if they were already engaged. Question, Thea said, stealing one of his fries. The Geneva painting, the forged Vermeer, you said you'd been following my career since then. How long have you been planning this? Nathaniel considered his answer carefully. I wasn't planning a proposal tonight. I was planning to meet you to see if the person behind those reports was as extraordinary as her work suggested. The proposal? He touched the ring on her finger. That was impulsive. The ring was commissioned after reading your 3rd report. You argued that rushing authentication for auction deadlines compromised scholarly integrity. That's when I knew I wanted to know you better. But I'd planned to court you properly first, reveal who I was gradually. Your ex-husband forced my hand. So you've been carrying an engagement ring for weeks, just in case. I'm a man who prepares for contingencies. That's not preparing for contingencies, that's confidence bordering on arrogance. Yes, Nathaniel agreed, I'm working on that. Thea laughed and kissed him across the sticky diner table, tasting salt and ketchup and the strange, impossible future they'd just decided to build together. Outside, New York hummed with its usual chaos. Somewhere, Marcus Trent was probably drinking heavily and calling his lawyers. Magnolia was probably drafting divorce papers. The Arts Center board was probably having an emergency meeting about their suddenly complicated donor situation. None of it mattered. Thea Kellen had her expertise, her integrity, her ring, and her absurdly dramatic billionaire fiancé who just ordered a second burger because the first one was surprisingly excellent. She'd never felt more herself in her entire life. So what did you think? Did Marcus get what he deserved, or did Nathaniel go too far? Was the proposal romantic or manipulative? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing different perspectives on this story. And if you enjoyed watching Marcus's world crumble in real time, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't defined by people who couldn't see it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story where karma works faster than anyone expected. More stories like this are coming, trust me, you won't want to miss them. Thanks for watching.